All right, here we are at the, as Tim called it, HydrosPlus Proving Grounds. My parents graciously let me do some heat testing. We're going to go ahead and use the bush hog and tackle this. Now this stuff is, you won't be able to tell just how thick that is, but it's going to be a pretty good job for this 4-foot bush hog. And we've got a HydrosPlus 9.5 gallon per minute pump, and it's tuned basically the way I send it. You know, I tell everybody to tune it to your preferences. It's probably a little tighter than I send it, just because I'm pretty greedy with hydraulic flow. So I'm willing to give up a bit of power steering luxury. You know, I'm not necessarily needing to steer it with my pinky. Certainly it's easy to steer, and most people, if you jumped on it, you wouldn't notice the difference. But if you have the luxury like I do of, you know, turning it up and turning it down just to see what it feels like, you can definitely turn it up a little bit higher. And what I would say is the way I've got it tuned right now is probably about the same amount of flow as you would get at maybe idle, maybe a little bit above idle. I haven't run the flow meter on this or on the steering circuit to get an exact measurement, but you know, if you know what the steering feels like at maybe, let's just say 1900 RPMs in the stock configuration, that's what it feels like, and that's what it's going to feel like all the time, whether I'm at wide open throttle or I'm at idle. With the HydrosPlus system, the steering gets a constant flow of fluid no matter the RPM. So that said, I've actually already been working for a friend this morning, and we moved some bee stone for about a little over an hour, but I took a 1 hour drive up to my parents' house, and so it's had a chance to cool off. And just to give you a measurement, let's see if I can see where I'm hitting it. I think that's right. We're at 108. You know, and obviously this is infrared, but I did go ahead and put my Power Beyond temperature gauge here, my fancy mounting mechanism. Now, this temperature gauge isn't powered. It uses the sensor, you know, that doesn't need power. The only power that goes to it's a light, which it doesn't have. But the lowest setting on this, I think, is 130. So right now it looks like it's no temperature at all, and that's because, as you just saw, we were at 108 on the back of the pump. Now, my experience has been that these have been pretty close. That said, I don't know that I've had it in a day like today. I'm in Arkansas at 11 o'clock. I think it's about 93 degrees. It is very hot, and we're going to tackle this grass. And this grass, I don't have a way to shoot myself, and I don't really like to be on camera anyway, but it's about 4 foot tall, I would say. Comes up to about my chest. I'm 6 foot tall. So maybe give you a sense. I'll go level with the tractor. And it's about level, and you can see that there's plenty of it. There's some grass that's going above the seat back. Some's a little lower, closer to the steering wheel. Well, there we are. I am going to take off bush hogging. I'm going to try to go, you know, the biggest heat contributor here today is really going to be the hydrostatic transmission, but obviously this all has to work in symphony here. So I'm going to try to go wide open in low range. I don't think high range, this grass is too much to do this in high range. So I'm going to go as fast as I can, and I'm going to run wide open throttle. And I say that because, you know, about 3,300 is going to be 540. But by the time this tall grass pulls down the bush hog, at wide open throttle, I should be running probably 540 RPMs. So that's how we're going to do it today, and we're going to see what temperature readings that we get. Okay, I made one round. I actually had to raise the bush hog. It was going to be a very slow process, and I want to make sure I get plenty of hydrostatic speed to contribute to the temperature. We're not going as fast as it'll go in low range. We're going okay. We have started to creep up on the temp scale here. Looks like it's hard to say, 130, 40, 50, 60. So we may be close to 140. Based on this, let's take you around. Shoot this at 138. So, I mean, that's consistent with what I typically see with the infrared versus this. So 138 on here would be just below that second mark, and that's right where we are. So maybe this will be a test for those of you who don't have a temp gauge. Using your infrared, I think is a fine enough proxy. We're not looking for resolution here down to the 10th of a degree. Probably 5-degree chunks would be just fine. So plus or minus 5 degrees, I'd be okay with. We're starting to gain some temp. I'm going to get some bug spray here. Make sure I don't hit any no-see-ums on me. Shouldn't be too many, as this is hot summer, but just in case. And I'll get back to mowing. All right, 30 minutes in. Been mowing as fast as I can. So basically what I'm doing, it's pretty rough out here. And I picked up the bush hog just a bit so I could get as much hydrostatic speed. I put the cruise control on wide open and hang on for dear life here is what I'm doing. It's a pretty bumpy ride, but I think on a normal day I wouldn't mow like this, but since I'm doing the heat testing, I want to make sure I'm making it as real world as possible, and my butt will have to deal with it this time. So we're at so I guess that marks 170. So we're probably 166 to 168 right now on this. And I've been watching it. That's about where it was just as we were driving. Let's hit this 168, right on the back, 169. So this is showing, and it may be warming up just a bit as it's sitting still and the fluid's not moving. This seems to be losing temp, and this might be heating up. Of course it is in the sun. There we go. Yep, 170, 169. No, shoot. Yeah, somewhere in that range. But the actual oil temp at the Power Beyond, well, we saw it peak there at probably 166, I think is what it really looked like to me, but it could be 168. It's really hard to see. But we're losing temp now. So 30 minutes in. I don't know that it's completely heat soaked at this point, so we'll keep going. I'll probably stop every 15-20 minutes, and I'll keep an eye on the gauge here just to see if I see any spikes, and I'll record those if I see them. Well, so my heat test is coming to a halt here. We're right at 180 on the fluid temp, which is fine. Problem is our engine temp is too high to keep going. So let's start it up here and let it pump for a second. I've been watching it, but I think when it did that, it shut off my PTO, because I shut it off right after. Now, this is probably it's really not that bad though, but that's probably a contributor. Clean now. So, let's get the infrared, see how close it is. See it? 181.2, and then we're reading, now we're reading 175, but it was right at 180. So it seems that those are pretty close. I guess this Power Beyond seems to cool off just a little faster than the pump. Of course, the pump's got a lot more mass to it and probably holding that heat just a bit. So, well, I will let this thing cool off to the point where it'll run again. And it's about 96 now. I just checked the temp. As soon as it cools off enough to run, we'll get back at it. But I guess one way to think about it is if the hydro pump is only at 180 when the engine's too hot to run, that's almost your fail-safe, meaning your tractor is going to overheat before your hydraulics. Now, that would not apply certainly if you were opening the pressure relief valve and doing a lot of squeezing fluid through tight spaces. But for something like this, I mean, honestly, especially when you add HydrosPlus, most people are not going to run wide open doing loader work or backhoe work. So because of that, I think this is the top heat test that you can do, meaning we're running wide open throttle. Now we're not engaging the hydraulics as much with the exception of the 3-point hitch, but this is probably as hot as it's going to get, or hot as I'm going to be able to get it. When I regularly check, most often with infrared. As you can see, it's pretty close to actual temp. But when I do this around the house, I'm doing backhoe and loader work, I don't see temps over about 140, 145. So those really, I wanted to make sure as I put these videos out that people are seeing really, the hardest test I can give it. And the other thing I'll mention, I'm not doing comparative tests I'd love to do comparative tests to the stock setup, but it's a lot of effort to take it back and forth and then actually get, I'm looking at a little over 2 acres here that we're mowing today, and it's really not a like for like unless I need to have enough acreage to mow in order to make sure that it's heat soaked and it's real world. I know a lot of people out here getting this, they've got 2 and 5 and 10 acres even. So it's not going to be enough to go and mow a 1/4 acre. I need to be out here for hours at a time, and hopefully, let's see where we are. We're just getting hotter. I'm going to start it up and let it cool down and then get back to mowing as soon as I can here. So we're back into the green. It didn't take too long. Our hydraulic temp came back down to about 168. Probably been setting here for 5 minutes or so, letting it run and circulate and pull, use the radiator to continue to cool. So I'm going back wide open here and see until it overheats again. The other thing I'll mention, let me shut it off. The other thing I'll mention, I am using low viscosity high guard in this, and I just changed it recently. Typically in Arkansas, because we get down to 0, like last year we got down to 0 for a day or so. We're in the teens every year for a few days, but we don't get at 0 all the time or below that. So I would typically run regular high guard. I'm running low vis because that's what's, if you open the dipstick, you see it says use low vis. If you talk to if you look at the literature and talk to the dealership, they say to run regular high guard here in Arkansas, but I'll say most of the people, a lot of the people that are customers are running these, especially for snow machines. They're up in the north and you're going to be running low vis. So I see this as probably, again, about the toughest test that we can do. 96-degree day, wide open throttle, low viscosity, thinnest hydraulic fluid that you can have. We're trying and going as fast as we possibly can. So we're trying to throw everything at it here and seeing what we're going to get. So I'm going to get back at it, and I'll either stop in 15 minutes or when it overheats again. All right, we have been mowing for just over an hour straight. with the exception, can't see this. Oh, here we go. Oh, there it is. 181, almost 182, which is basically consistent with this. 179, 180 probably. I've been watching it as we're going. Seems to be right where it is right now, maybe just a degree above. It's kind of where it just hangs. So I think that's probably a sign that that's where the operating temperature is, based on what we're doing today. Again, this is wide open throttle, engine going as hard as it can, PTO going as hard as it can, and like I said, 96-degree day. It's about all I can do to stay out here, to be honest. I don't know if anybody is dumb enough to mow in quite this much heat. Now, got a little bit of a breeze picking up, so that's kind of nice. But I'm going to keep going and see where we end up here. Okay, now the temp check, but this one has a caveat, 170. So I stopped to do a temp check at 179. Yeah, this one seems to drop faster, but it's been off for a second because my phone is too hot to video, and I have a GoPro, but it's all the way over at the truck. And so since I've stopped last, so we're still holding about 180, anywhere between 175 and 180 is what I'll say, because I did do, the tractor overheated again. It didn't overheat, that's a little bit misleading, but the filter on the front kind of got clogged up, and as you can see, it depends on what you're going through, but I had, whenever you turn the tractor off, there's a bunch of stuff here and it all fell down. But also the one inside. So I had to clean that off. And at that point, my phone would not video because it was too hot. And that gives you a sense of how hot it is. It's really hot out here right now. I'm putting my phone in the shade here, but it's still managing to get a little bit warm. So, I'm going to call this one, I'll go most more, but we're really talking about 175 to 180. See what this says. When I shot it earlier, it said 177. Yeah, that's 177 right now. So, yeah. So it seems to be that's kind of the top temp that we're seeing so far in this condition. You're talking somewhere between 80 and 85 degrees above ambient temp at this point. I don't yet have a good comparison of what the stock pump is like. Now, anecdotally, or people I've heard talk about mowing anywhere between 180 and 190 is what I've heard people are getting doing this type of work in hot weather. But I will do that test eventually, but I can't do it today just because I don't have enough time. All right, we're on the fourth time the tractor has overheated. It took me a second. I caught it at 178 earlier. It's 176.5 right now. Let's see what we got on the back. 178, 180. So that's about 178, 180 was about what this gauge measured. You can see it's almost down to 172 now. When I stopped, but I went ahead and cleaned out the filter and let it run for a second. So it's probably gonna be the last temp check. I'm just about done here. Like I said, this is almost 3 acres, 2.5 maybe. Ambient temp 96. Looks like about the highest I saw watching it really just goes up to right about 180 and just kind of camps out. So 85 degrees above ambient. That's a pretty good number. 180 is a key number. You don't really want to be a whole lot higher than that continuously, but it's pretty interesting to me. Like once you stop, you can stop for 5 minutes and it'll cool off pretty significantly. So I've tried to go as constantly as I could. It is hot. I am smoked, and I've been out here for probably 2.5 to about 3 hours at this point. So yeah, I think it's gonna be my last time. I'm gonna finish this up and head to the house. But I hope this is helpful for those of you worried about heat. Like I mentioned, this is the hardest thing that I've done. Every time I've done it with backhoe working for 30 minutes to an hour. Of course, you can only dig so much in a row because you got to move different things. Loader work, same thing. I'm seeing temperatures of around 145, 150, which are no concern at all for sure. If I were seeing temperatures at 200, I would worry about that. And again, this isn't, I don't know how this compares to the regular pump and setup. But again, what I've read, it seems to be pretty similar. I will do that test. I'll have to do it. Obviously, I'll have all this bush hog, but I'll put the mowing deck on and do it with the regular pump probably soon, just to get that comparison. So, and I won't be surprised if it's a degree or two hotter. But the verdict from all of my testing so far is there's really nothing to worry about. The only time I see it get hot is when I'm opening pressure relief valves, and that's usually through the hydrostatic. So hope this is helpful. Appreciate you watching.